Hey everyone, I'm Jake the Atheist, and welcome back to another video. Today is kind of different. I've got a special guest in person for our video topic today, but I should introduce her first, and here she is. It's Dee the Humanist, everyone.
Good to be here visiting Seattle. It's cold, but it's beautiful. So,
yeah, that's a good description. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about both of our experiences leaving Christianity or religion in general and how we went about doing it. Not so specifically our deconversion stories, but more so about, what the process of going public with our experience was like and what went well, what didn't go well, and maybe you can learn from some of our mistakes, and maybe we have a little bit of advice that we can offer to people who, were in the spot that we were a couple of years ago. So without further ado, let's jump to the intro. Hey, future Jake here. Over the course of editing this video, I became involved with a fundraiser organized by my friend Ethan Michael, who you might know as your friendly neighborhood atheist, and I thought it lined up perfectly with the theme of this video. We'll be raising funds for Recovering from Religion, which is an organization committed to helping people who are thinking about or who have already started making the often difficult transition away from religious belief. And if that sounds like you, I'd encourage you to check them out. I'll put some links to the RFR's website in the description. Ethan has assembled an awesome crew of people to help him out, and together we'll all be joining him on his channel this February the 19th for this super cool live stream fundraiser thingy. Details for that will also be in the description, and please consider donating if you have the means, and I look forward to seeing you there. Now let's get back to the video. So Dee, welcome to the channel.
Thanks.
Let's start with a little bit of backstory, like maybe how long were you a believer before you were not?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say because I grew up in Christianity, but I didn't feel like I was a serious practicing Christian until I was 15 years old. So that's kind of where I started for me. And then I was serious about it from the age of 15 until 21 or 22. I think I was just turning 22.
Okay.
So from the late end of my teenage years, very early 20s.
Gotcha. I'm kind of similar, honestly. As far as when I was starting to take it seriously, I think that probably happened when I was maybe 10 or 12. So a little bit earlier, but I think I deconverted right in the middle of when I was 21 or so. So it's kind of similar.
Yeah, same timeline.
So maybe a decade or so, call it, where I was a Christian, and then on top of that, how long have you now been, I guess, out or publicly non-religious?
Let's see. I guess I was 22 when I became non-religious, and then I fully came out publicly that I wasn't religious to everybody in 2020. So when the pandemic hit, shortly after that, that's when I became public about it. So it was 4 or 5 years where I was just quiet about it. Yeah. I told people that I was around, people in my general vicinity, but to people from my past, the people who I was very religious around in the first place when I lived in Arkansas, they had no idea.
Kind of depends on the person.
Yeah, it depends on the person.
Gotcha.
But people who I was face to face with when I lived in Texas, they knew. Everybody knew within 6 months.
Yeah. I guess I should answer that for myself as well.
Yeah, it's your turn.
But yeah, so I've been publicly non-religious basically since I realized I was an atheist, maybe within a couple of months. If I was 21, I'm 24 now, so that's been 3 years. And it was kind of a forced thing because the girl I was dating at the time was a Christian, and she already kind of knew that I was having questions, and we talked about a bunch of stuff, beforehand, but that was the deciding factor of whether or not we would keep having a relationship or not. So I kind of had to tell her, and then after that, I just told my parents and kind of anybody else who wanted to know, right off the bat.
So 3 years and 5.5 years.
Yeah. Maybe we can talk about what motivated you to come out, if anything did at all.
I think what motivated me for that part is because that was 4 years later. And what motivated me for that is the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, I saw a lot of Christians using end times ideas to kind of scare vulnerable people into being religious. And I was like, no, I'm not okay with this. I've been quiet about the fact that I'm not Christian anymore. But this is ridiculous. So I want it to be known that when I start critiquing some of these things that are being said, the reason why I'm doing it is because I'm not a Christian anymore. And surprise, I haven't been a Christian for like 4 years.
Amazing. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it was like, I was kind of like frustrated that I had been raised to believe so many like really fundamentalist, like really not great things. So I kind of wanted to like debate with a lot of my family members and that kind of thing and like challenge their beliefs and try and get them to see the way that I saw. And that didn't really work at all.
Yeah.
That's, I guess, the short version of how I came out. Let's see. The next question is, I guess, how did you decide to make your new perspective public? How did you go about it, maybe? Like, did you talk to people face to face? Did you just like drop a bomb on social media and just peace out? Like
both. I've done all the strategies, I feel like, at different times. I did it in person with a lot of my new friends. That's kind of like my practice.
Yeah, when you moved to Houston?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I started meeting new people and I started telling them that I was an atheist. So that was what I did at first to kind of get that practice and get used to like telling people, because it was kind of shocking for me to even say it out loud, you know? The big coming out, I guess, that I did was public. And what I did is I like doing artsy things or like creative things. So I was like, how can I communicate this in like a way that's not just like, all right, I'm not a Christian anymore. Like I kind of wanted to do more than that. And so I came up with like a picture where I was holding up my Bible in front of the camera and I had like a text in front of it that said, I'm an atheist. And then I wrote like this long post on Facebook about why I was coming out as atheist at that time. Like I said, because of the pandemic. And I was pretty much telling people like we shouldn't be manipulating people into believing what we believe.
Yeah. And as far as like how I made my perspective public, I don't think I ever made like a social media post or anything. I think it was all kind of like word of mouth. Like I told my parents, I told a few friends, and that just kind of spread to like the church that I grew up in. Like I had gone there most of my entire youth. So most of my friends were all from that same church. And I think once one person knew, everybody kind of knew. When I stopped showing up for, youth group events and church services and that kind of thing, everyone was like, oh, he's gone. We lost him. And that's like a perfect way to jump into the next question, which is like, how did other people react? Like,
so the reaction when I came out publicly, like the full post that I was telling you about, it ended up getting shared like all over the place. And I had a lot of people who were non-religious commenting on my post in support of what I was doing and like telling me like, this is amazing, like good for you for sticking up for what you believe in. And also like being in the South doing that is a big deal. And so it was really cool to have all of that support from all these people. And I even had some Christians from my past who were supportive of me, which was pretty cool. So that was like the best case scenario, I guess. I did have some not great things happen.
Yeah.
It was the people that I grew up with or that I went to college with that were a little bit more challenging.
Okay.
So after I came out publicly, then I felt the freedom to start posting things that I wanted to post and not have to hide myself anymore.
Yeah.
And I shared this post this one time about like, it was really heartfelt about like how like broken I was about the fact that I wasn't a Christian anymore. And I shared that on Facebook about how I was feeling. And my pastor from back in Arkansas commented on it and said, I don't know why you're sharing this stuff because you obviously never believed. Basically, it seemed like he was telling me that I should not talk about this. And that was really tough for me because like I spent time around his family. I had mentored young women at his church. Like his church supported me in mission trip initiatives. Like I was kind of seen as like, from what I could tell, as like a model Christian. And I really, truly believed it. And so it was really hurtful to have somebody like that just completely tell me that I should stop talking because I obviously never believed.
Yeah.
And it felt like he was choosing his like beliefs or ideas over the person in front of them. So that was like the hardest reaction I think that I had. And I had some friends too that they kind of stopped talking to me if they couldn't convert me to Christianity. And that was kind of tough because it was like I wanted to have conversations that weren't about Christianity. And it would always come back to that. And it would always come back to them trying to convert me back. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. So those were probably the worst reactions to me coming out.
Gotcha. I had a lot of church friends who just kind of dropped off the map. Like they didn't really talk to me much anymore after that. So those just like instantly kind of went out the window. And then as far as like people who were like close to me, like my parents, I think they felt most of the heat of my frustrations because like I was pretty challenging to their beliefs and they weren't really anywhere close to the same path that I was on, where they were, you know, reconsidering their beliefs at all, or if anything, they were stronger than ever, because that was kind of like just after the window when, you know, my younger brother was sick and passed away and all that. So I feel like, I don't know, it may have come across as even more of a slap in the face to them because I, you know, was trying to shake something that might have helped them get through a tough time. There was a friend of mine who, I think he was like the only non-believer friend I had at that time. When I told him that I wasn't a believer, he was like, that's cool, man.
It is.
That's fine. It is. And I was like, okay, thanks. We're actually starting to get into the advice stuff now, which is, I guess the one question that might start to help some other people is like, what would you change about how you came out? Or was there anything that you might do differently?
I feel like I'm in a different place now than I was when I first came out. I think maybe I would be a little bit less confrontational with people. But to be honest, I think in the middle of it, like the way that I reacted was like it was okay, because like I had just gotten out of a very fundamentalist form of Christianity. And when that happens, like you do have a lot of built up anger or a lot of like mixed emotions and confusion. So I honestly, you know, maybe I didn't deal with those situations in the best way, but I don't know if I would necessarily think it was like the biggest deal in the world that I did that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Honestly, I kind of am like, the way it happened is the way that it happened.
Yeah.
For me, it worked because I'm a very like individualistic person. I'm very independent. And so I was completely fine with, this is terrible, but if I needed to cut off relationships, I was kind of like, it is what it is. It's going to be that way if they're not going to be supportive of me. I don't think that works for everybody.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like for you, for example, you have your like your parents and your siblings and your friends that maybe you wanted to keep those relationships with, which is probably healthy. And that's that would take a little bit of a different approach. So I think if I was in that kind of situation where I came out when I was in the context of being with close family and friends, and I wanted to make sure I kept those as much as possible, I think I would learn how to communicate in a less angry way, in a more assertive way, so get across what I actually wanted to say, but also try not to alienate people.
Yeah. Maybe be a little bit more empathetic and sensitive, kind of.
Yeah, be a little bit more sensitive. I think that's the biggest thing to realize, is that for each person, it's going to be different, and depending on your specific context, it's going to be different on how you deal with that situation.
Yeah.
But what about you?
Yeah, for me, I mean, the obvious one is like I wouldn't come out swinging, kind of. Like I think I would focus a lot more on like the questions that I have. And I think one thing, probably the biggest thing that I would have changed, was I wouldn't do it kind of privately, like within my own head. Like I never really made these questions public, besides with a couple of pastor friends and maybe like group leaders at church. But like as far as like my family, they didn't really know what I was kind of thinking or going through until the one day where I just decided to kind of lay it all out in the open and just say, hey, I'm an atheist. It was like a switch flipping, you know, kind of like where they went from one day like, oh, our son's a Christian and he's a good Christian boy. And then he's like, oh, I'm an atheist now. And I think that kind of led to a lot of the damage that came to those relationships, where if I had kind of been more vocal about the questions that I had as I was thinking about them, you know, maybe a couple of months before, you know, I reached the point of deconversion, you know, maybe I could have talked with them about it and at least kind of gotten them in the mindset of, you know, Jake's maybe he's still a believer, but he's questioning, you know, that kind of thing, where they're like maybe prepared a little bit more for that kind of big change. I think I would try and be more communicative with the people that are close to me, and, you know, not just kind of like hold everything in and then just kind of like just explode at the end.
We have two different backgrounds with that though. So you were like submersed in the Christian environment because you were homeschooled, and like your entire social life revolved around Christianity, right?
Yeah, pretty much for the most part.
So I imagine that makes it a lot harder, because I grew up and I was like Christian, but I also went to public school. I had a lot of things that were outside of my Christian environment. So it was almost like in some ways a choice for me to like push myself into that Christian environment. And yours was kind of
So you weren't like a good Christian, right? Like,
no, I was a really good Christian. But I just had both sides, you know,
I see.
of that environment.
Okay. To piggyback on that, like what advice would you give to somebody else who is coming out? You know, maybe they're in a similar situation, maybe they're in a completely different situation or religion entirely, but they still want to kind of like let people know that their beliefs have changed and not damage as many relationships as me. What would you say to those kind of people?
I would say a couple of things. First of all, if your livelihood depends on your beliefs, for example, if your job is related to your Christian beliefs, or your family will cut you off financially or in a like really big way for not believing anymore, work to get to a point where maybe you're not working that job anymore, or get to a point where you are a little bit more independent from people before you come out completely. It might be safer to do it that way. Another thing that I would recommend is that if you're starting to question these beliefs, you don't have to come out to everybody immediately, but you should find somebody who you can trust, who you can open up to and let them know, like, this is what I'm thinking, and somebody that you know will not judge you for this. So in my case, I went to an atheist coworker that I worked with because I knew that he would be okay with the fact that I wasn't believing anymore. And he actually gave me a lot of resources and just was really empathetic to where I was at.
That's good. That's good advice. Is that work better if they're in person, where you can kind of talk face to face, or can they meet somebody online if they don't know anybody?
Yeah, it depends on who you are and how you interact. But for me, I went a couple of different routes. I had in-person people that I talked to. I also went online to a lot of support groups, like ex-Christians, like recovering from religion, or like just like different types of groups where I felt like I could vent and say what I was really thinking, and people would actually listen and be supportive, or people who are also experiencing the same thing. So online communities, I think, can be really great for people if they just don't know where to turn to. Like another thing that I did for the in-person part though, is I used, so the dating app Bumble has a friend portion, like the Bumble BFF, and I would meet people that way. So I would go on the app, and I would put in like my religious preference, of like atheist or agnostic, and I would meet people that way and like start these friendships with people, and then like tell them about what I went through, and then like be able to get like support that way. That's
a pretty good idea, honestly.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
My advice is kind of similar to yours. I kind of broke it down into 3 bullet points, like I'm a businessman or something, you know, like A, B, and C here. But yeah, number 1 is like the first thing that I would tell people is don't drop bombs on people. Like that doesn't work. They call it a bomb for a reason. Like what do you expect to happen? Like it's gonna
people get defensive when you do that, and they don't want to listen to anything that you have to say. They're just like shut down.
Yeah, like, you know, the other person has feelings and they know you a certain way, and like, you know, it's to kind of like cut them off or like rip the Band-Aid off, that could cause a lot of problems, you know, unless you know them really well and you know how they would react. Just, I would, in general, don't do that. The second thing is that there's nothing wrong with waiting, and, you know, like you were saying, where if you're in a spot where you don't feel like you can kind of like be open about it now, you know, it's cool. Just keep it to yourself for a little bit, maybe with a certain group of people, maybe with everybody if you have to, but there's nothing wrong with, you know, not telling anyone, or maybe just starting conversations with people that, you know, that you're close to, and kind of let them know that you're having questions, but, you know, maybe not, you know, like I said, don't drop the bomb on them all at once. And then Yeah, I guess last thing was, you said that pretty well. It was like, don't put yourself at risk either, where, like if it's gonna, threaten your job or your way of life, like, your living situation with family members, like obviously don't mess with that. Like, it's not really worth it. Like, you don't have to come out to people, regardless of how much you want to, if it's gonna harm you in some way and like, make your life a literal hell, unlike the hell that you might have used to believe in. Yeah, avoid both of those hells, okay?
Yeah.
Just that in general. I think those are the three that are the biggest for me. Maybe we can give people a little bit of hope as well, because this is kind of daunting, but like, maybe what's it like on the other side, as far as like, once you've come out, how has your life changed? Maybe for the better, maybe for the worse. Start with the worst. Give us the bad news first, and then
the worst.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I think the worst part for me was just like losing this built-in kind of set thing that I'm supposed to be doing. Like, my purpose in life and everything was kind of just built in. My social life was just built in to Christianity. So when that all went away, like my self-worth and everything went with it.
Okay.
So like everything that I thought was me was actually my religious beliefs. And so when those went away, I was like, who am I? And what do I even think? So that was hard to have to rebuild my identity. And then also the rebuilding of my friend group, social life. That was the hardest part. What's been good about it?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, the freedom. Like everybody, like I think talks about like how free you are. Like, oh my gosh, when I was a Christian, it was so like, I was so stuck with like the way that I was supposed to think or the way I was supposed to do things. And there was all this fear about like, what would happen if I didn't do these things? Yeah, and it was like being loyal to Christianity at the expense of my own well-being. So leaving that, like there was all this freedom to be like who I actually was, to be accepting. I was able to be more accepting of other people and just also look out for my own well-being, which I kind of abandoned as a Christian. So that's how it's improved, is improved well-being, improved mental freedom, and improved acceptance of other people.
That was good. I think that kind of outweighs the con of having to like maybe make some more friends. So
yeah, right.
I think it's worth
There's
it.
more people out there. There's so many people out there.
Yeah.
If people don't want to be your friend, you'll find other friends. Like,
And for me, I think what's changed for the worse since I was an atheist? I can't really think of much beyond what you said, which is, my friend group is smaller and that whole community thing is just, it's not really there anymore, which sucks a little bit, but you can still make friends. The same thing kind of goes for me too, where it's like, what has improved? In a way, everything has become more complicated, but in a way, it's still infinitely better, where I feel a whole lot less judgmental of people and more accepting, and like, I'm a lot more focused on like the good that I can do for the world as opposed to like the good that I can do for God or the church or this or that. And it's like, I feel like I'll be able to have a more tangible impact, I guess, in people's lives, as opposed to like trying to solve people's problems after they die. Like, that doesn't seem to do very much good.
Yeah.
And so stuff like that, I don't know, it feels more fulfilling too, like not just doing a YouTube channel, but like, I guess I feel more confident about what I believe, and not in like a blind faith kind of way. Like I feel
has basis. What you believe has basis.
Like now I know that like what I believe I can demonstrate, and if things can't be proven, like I'm not going to jump to conclusions and that kind of thing. Like I feel maybe more stable as a person. Like I don't feel like I'll fall for quite as many things. Which
critical thinking, that's what it does for us.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Leaving has definitely improved critical thinking abilities. So you're more likely to, well, not everybody, but a lot of us who left, we really tapped into that critical thinking side because we really cared about knowing things that were like legitimately true and that could be verified over and over again, because we came from a background where we were just supposed to believe things for the sake of believing them. And like you said, it just felt very unstable, and it's a lot more stable to just believe things that are based on things that you can consistently verify. Yeah.
It's not a bad way to live. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Not bad.
I'll take it. But for those of you who are still kind of like trying to figure this all out and you're kind of stressed out and worried about how it'll go. I hope you got some good advice from this. I hope my bad examples and these good examples were, gave you a little bit more of a idea in your head of how you might want to do things. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me on social media or Dee. I'm always happy to help out. I'm sure you are, if people
of course,
have
always.
more questions. And yeah, that basically concludes the video. Goodbye. Go away. I'm just kidding. No, I need to plug you. Yeah,
come check out my channel, Dee the Humanist on YouTube.
Yes.
And Twitter.
And Twitter. Anything else you want to plug?
You can find me on Instagram and Facebook, but Twitter and YouTube are like the main places.
Okay. So definitely go check out Dee's channel on YouTube, because today both of us are uploading a video on our channels featuring each other. So if you want to see more of me or more of her, go check out her channel. She'll be running the show over there. And you'll get to hear us talk about something else pretty interesting. It's about, should I tell them?
It's about stoicism.
Okay. Well, yeah, you guys know now. But yeah, we talked about that, and it was a good talk. We haven't talked about that yet because we're about to record that, but it was a good talk. I'm telling you from the future, I know that because of my atheism powers. So definitely go check that out. And then you know where I am. I'm on YouTube here. Hello, you're watching me right now. I don't need to tell you that, but I can tell you to subscribe because those are cool, right? And yeah, follow me on all other social media platforms. My username is @atheistjake, and check me out on Twitter. Sometimes I say things. Instagram, sometimes I post things. Oh yeah, bloopers for this video, outtakes and such. I'll cut together, and you'll get to see both of us mess up something.
Multiple times.
This was kind of a good recording though, but if there are outtakes, I'll put some of those on my TikTok. So follow me, same username down there, and I think that is basically everything. So thanks again for watching. I hope you got something good out of it, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.